Burnout is not a modern affliction, it is an ancient exhaustion. The Stoics faced it in the courts of emperors, in the barracks of soldiers, and in the silence of their own thoughts. Today, we wear our stress like a badge, filling our calendars, chasing goals, and numbing ourselves with distractions. But inside, we are quietly burning out. The fire that once fueled our ambition now scorches the very soul it meant to warm. You may have felt it. That dull emptiness in your chest after a long day. The sense that everything you're doing is both too much and not enough. You wake up tired. You go to bed restless. You say yes to things that steal your energy and no to things that would restore it. The flame that once gave you light is now threatening to consume you. The Stoics offer a different way. They didn't just teach endurance, they taught alignment. They taught how to preserve your strength by focusing it. They taught that it is not the weight of life that crushes us, but the way we carry it. If you are feeling stretched, drained, or hollow, this is your call to return. To live not in reaction, but with reason. To stop mistaking exhaustion for virtue. This is the Stoic path to avoid burnout. Not by doing less, but by doing what matters. Not by retreating, but by refining. In this script, we will walk through 3 core strategies grounded in Stoic philosophy that will help you preserve your inner fire without letting it burn you alive. Let us begin. Chapter 1. Guard your energy like your character. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" That single question is not merely rhetorical, it is a form of armor. A moment-to-moment audit of attention. A practice of protecting your mind from being pulled into 1,000 unnecessary battles. It is the Stoic's compass in a world flooded with distractions, demands, and noise. Because burnout does not arrive like a sudden storm. It builds like a slow leak, beginning the instant we abandon intention in favor of obligation. It starts the moment we stop guarding our inner life and begin offering it to everything and everyone indiscriminately. The Stoics knew that attention is the currency of life. What you give it to, you give life to. What you entertain, you empower. If you squander that energy on petty arguments, endless scrolling, mindless tasks, and shallow conversations, you are emptying the well from which all purpose must be drawn. Seneca warned that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality, that suffering is often self-inflicted through misplaced attention. The tragedy of our time is not just busyness, it is that our busyness is meaningless. We run fast on treadmills that lead nowhere. We confuse motion with progress. Ask yourself, how many things in your day are chosen by your values, and how many are chosen by fear? Fear of disappointing someone, fear of being seen as lazy, fear of not doing enough, fear of falling behind. When your schedule becomes a reaction to fear rather than a reflection of purpose, burnout is inevitable. The Stoic response is to reclaim your agency, to move from reflex to reason. They do not say yes to everything. They say yes only to what aligns with principle, because they know that energy, like money, must be budgeted with care, or it vanishes into emptiness. Boundaries are not walls of selfishness. They are gates of clarity. The Stoic protects their energy because they understand its sacred function, to animate virtue. Every act of patience, every moment of courage, every word of wisdom requires fuel. If you deplete that fuel on trivialities, you will have nothing left for what truly matters. Just as you would not give your house keys to a stranger, the Stoic does not give their time to chaos. They are not hostile, but they are selective. Their silence is not avoidance, it is wisdom. Their withdrawal is not weakness, it is self-respect. You are not broken for needing rest. You are not fragile for declining yet another draining obligation. You are not lazy for choosing stillness over the performance of productivity. The modern world wants you to believe that your worth is tied to your exhaustion, that if you are not burned out, you are not working hard enough. But this is a lie designed to keep you on a wheel that never stops turning. Burnout thrives on this illusion that depletion is the price of success, that fatigue equals significance. The Stoics saw through that. They knew that life is not about how much you can endure blindly, but about what you endure for. They remind us that exhaustion without virtue is simply erosion. You are not supposed to burn your soul to light someone else's path while extinguishing your own. To serve others meaningfully, you must first remain connected to your own reason. You must serve your principles, not your people-pleasing. You must nourish the mind before you attempt to influence the world around you. Saying no is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of wisdom. It is not a rejection of others. It is a return to your priorities. Sometimes the greatest discipline is found in what you refuse to do. Saying no to overcommitment, to false urgency, to the illusion of being needed by all things at all times, is the very thing that allows you to show up with strength where it truly counts. Epictetus, who knew the prison of both chains and expectations, warned us, "Be mindful of who and what you allow into your inner world, because not everything that knocks deserves to be let in. Some people enter only to stir chaos. Some responsibilities dress themselves in importance, but are hollow at the core. There are demands that appear urgent, but are in fact distractions wearing the mask of duty. Every time you feel your peace fray, your breath shorten, your jaw tighten, pause. These are your body's way of signaling that your boundary has been crossed, that something has gained access to your inner life without your full consent. Ask yourself in these moments, is this necessary? Is this task, this person, this thought, this commitment necessary? If the answer is no, if it does not serve your virtue, if it does not align with your values, then release it. Burnout is not about how many hours you work. It's about how many of those hours are spent in contradiction to what you truly believe. It is not intensity that drains you, it is misalignment. Invisible weights are often the heaviest. The pressure to be agreeable, the impulse to respond to every request, the fear of being misunderstood. But the Stoic knows that you cannot carry every load and still walk with strength. Let go of what is not yours. Let go of the need to explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Let go of the desire to fix everything outside of you while neglecting the peace within you. And when you feel that rising urge to intervene in every debate, to prove yourself, to stretch yourself thin, trying to be enough for everyone, pause. That moment is sacred. It is the gap between reaction and reason, between emotional impulse and stoic restraint. Remember, your time is not endless. Your presence is not inexhaustible. Your mind is not immune to fatigue. All of these must be protected, not exploited. You are a flame, yes, but you are not meant to be a wildfire. You are meant to illuminate with control, not consume everything in your path. Guard your energy the way you would guard your virtue, because in the Stoic understanding, they are not separate. You cannot live wisely if you are constantly drained. You cannot serve justice if you are overwhelmed. You cannot practice courage if you are scattered and depleted. Energy is the soil from which your character grows. Preserve it, tend to it, and when necessary, protect it with silence, with solitude, with a decisive and unapologetic no. To the Stoic, self-care is not indulgence. It is preparation. It is the essential maintenance of the vessel that carries purpose. Without recovery, even the strongest intention will eventually crumble. Self-care is not a reward for finishing the race. It is the breath that allows you to keep running it. It is not retreat from life's challenges, but a recalibration that ensures you meet them with strength instead of weariness. Rest is the act of strategic withdrawal, not to avoid responsibility, but to sharpen your edge before returning to it. The Stoic does not waste energy trying to be omnipresent. They are not obsessed with being available to all things, at all times, to all people. They focus their energy like a blade, sharp, efficient, and deliberate. They do not blur their day with half-hearted commitments and shallow obligations. Instead, they practice restraint and intention. They understand that depth, not breadth, creates lasting impact. That fewer things done with full presence are infinitely more powerful than 100 things done while fragmented and distracted. Self-care, in this sense, is not a bath or a break. It is a discipline, a form of inner maintenance, an act of philosophical responsibility. It is the clarity to step back and say, "This must wait, because I cannot give it my best right now." Not because you are lazy or avoiding life, but because you are committed to living with intention. It is the humility to acknowledge your limits, not with guilt, but with grace. The courage to protect your focus, even if it means disappointing others. The wisdom to know that saying yes to everything is the fastest way to dilute the power of your purpose. Rest, in this light, is not a retreat from effort. It is what makes true effort possible. The Stoics understood that a sword must be sharpened, a flame must be tended, and a mind must be restored if it is to act in accordance with nature. They did not see rest as weakness, but as a form of preparation, as a way to restore balance, to return to the center, to ensure that action flows from reason, not reactivity. They built rhythms into their lives that allowed for withdrawal, contemplation, and internal recalibration. These were not luxuries, they were essential. The Stoic draws on this wisdom not occasionally, but daily. They do not wait for collapse before practicing care. They build systems into their lives that honor replenishment the way a warrior tends to their armor, not only after battle, but before it. They design their lives with the understanding that fatigue is not a badge of honor, that burnout is not proof of ambition, it is proof of misalignment. They make space for solitude. They protect time for reflection. They learn to sit with themselves without noise. They train themselves to be comfortable in quiet so they can act with force when it counts. So the next time you find yourself on the edge of collapse, not just physically but spiritually, do not shame yourself for pausing. Do not guilt-trip your exhaustion as if it were a flaw. Sit with it like a Stoic sits with discomfort, with honesty, and with purpose. Acknowledge it. Welcome the message it brings. Listen to what it's telling you about your path, your pace, your priorities. It may not be weakness, it may be the sign of your soul asking to return to alignment, to stop the outward race and come back inward. Then remember, this is not the end of your fire. It is the beginning of your return. It is the quiet rebuild before the next great act, the slow reassembly of self after being pulled in too many directions. It is the silence in which strength gathers, not the strength of force, but the strength of clarity, of renewed direction, of refined purpose. It is the inhale before the necessary breath out, the filling of your lungs with intention before you step forward again. It is the sacred pause that transforms the automatic into the deliberate, the reactive into the composed. It is here, in this stillness, where clarity is reborn, where your values rise from the fog of fatigue and speak with renewed authority. From that clarity, you will rise, not more exhausted, not more entangled in the demands of others, but more focused, more grounded, more awake to what truly deserves your time. You will rise not with louder steps, but with steadier ones, not with urgency, but with wisdom. You will move not to keep up, but to move in alignment. This is the Stoic way, not to burn out, but to burn wisely. to maintain the fire of purpose without letting it become a wildfire of chaos. Not to pour yourself into every cup until you're empty, but to choose where you pour and why. This is not about quitting, it is about returning to what is essential, returning to what is within your control, returning to the parts of yourself that are often lost in the chaos of modern expectation, returning to the quiet truths that don't shout, but always endure. It is about peeling away the noise and distractions that accumulate like dust on the mirror of your mind until you can finally see yourself clearly again, until your thoughts are your own, until your actions come not from panic, but from principle. It is about remembering what only you can do, what only you can be, your irreplaceable role in the moral order of the world. The Stoic does not seek applause for this return. It is not a dramatic gesture. It is subtle, often invisible to others, but deeply transformative. It is about silencing the static so you can hear your conscience again. About listening not to what is loudest, but to what is truest. Until you can distinguish not just between urgent and important, but between noise and necessity, between motion and meaning. You are not collapsing. You are being rebuilt, refined, restructured at the foundation. You are not falling apart. You are shedding what no longer serves your path. You are not giving up. You are stepping away from illusions so you can walk again in truth. This is the sacred pause, not of defeat, but of discipline. The stillness before deliberate movement. The tension of the bow before the arrow is released. The Stoic knows this moment well. They do not rush it. They honor it with stillness, with contemplation, with restraint. For it is in this very space, between overextension and intentional return, that one finds their true strength. And from this place of pause, of grounding, of alignment, they rise, not just to continue, but to continue with power that is no longer scattered, with peace that cannot be disturbed, and with purpose that pierces through the fog of modern life, like light through mist. Start each morning with the question Marcus posed: is this necessary? Write it at the top of your task list. As the day unfolds, ask it again. Filter your commitments through it. If the answer is no, or worse, if the answer is just so I don't disappoint someone, step back. Reclaim that time. Let your boundaries speak louder than your exhaustion. This is not neglect. This is discipline. It is the deliberate choice to stop pouring yourself into every crack in the wall and instead reinforce the foundation. It is not a rejection of work, but a refinement of it. Discipline to the Stoic means being ruthless about what deserves your time and what does not. It means recognizing that effort alone does not make something noble. Only purposeful effort does. Burnout does not come from doing too much. It comes from doing too much without direction, without clarity, without connection to your deeper values. Burnout is not caused by effort. It's caused by misdirected effort. It's what happens when we mistake motion for progress, noise for significance, and fatigue for worthiness. It's what happens when we betray our internal compass in an attempt to meet external expectations. The Stoic sees this and stops, not out of laziness, but out of precision. They understand that a life of excellence requires intentional conservation of energy, because your energy is the currency through which your virtue operates. When it is spent recklessly, your values get diluted, your vision gets blurry, and your resilience wears thin. Begin guarding your energy like you guard your reputation, not as a reaction, but as a principle. Be just as careful with where your mind goes, what you allow your heart to worry over, and who you give your presence to. Because energy, once drained, does not come back without cost. And when you waste it on the trivial, you rob your future self of the strength to face what truly matters. Your energy is not infinite. Your focus is not replaceable. In many ways, your energy and your reputation are one and the same. Both are reflections of your values in motion, both must be earned, and both can be lost if not protected with care and intention. Chapter 2. Return to your inner citadel. When the world becomes loud and heavy, the Stoic returns, not to a place, but to a principle. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner citadel, a fortress within, untouched by the chaos outside, immune to the judgment of others, unshaken by the noise of ambition, opinion, and confusion. Burnout intensifies not because life becomes harder, but because we lose access to that quiet stronghold. We forget we have somewhere to go, a mental refuge where clarity reigns and where peace is not circumstantial but cultivated. We burn out when we abandon that place, when we allow the pressures of the world to define our worth, when we start measuring ourselves by how many notifications we respond to, how many people we please, how many deadlines we beat. Each time we absorb every crisis as our personal responsibility, every expectation as a command, and every criticism as a wound, we erode the walls of our inner fortress. Without the citadel, we are exposed, open to every storm, every whisper of disapproval, every gust of uncertainty. To avoid burnout, the Stoic does not retreat from responsibility. They retreat from false identity. They do not run from life, but they refuse to lose themselves in the roles they are expected to play. They understand that burnout often begins not in the body, but in the soul, when the self is buried beneath layers of expectation, performance, and external identity. The Stoic remains engaged with the world, but they do so without allowing it to consume them. They serve, but they do not become servants to the image others have of them. They take action, but they are not defined by their outcomes. They lead, they build, they work, but they do not forget who they are beneath it all. You are not your job title. You are not the status attached to your productivity. You are not the sum total of your calendar, your inbox, or your achievements. Nor are you your failures, your regrets, or your doubts. You are not what others praise, and you are not what others criticize. You are something deeper, a rational being, endowed with choice and conscience, capable of reason, guided by principles, and accountable to your own soul before anything else. Your task is not to dominate the world or to check every box. It is to govern your inner life with honesty, to align your will with what is just, to act in accordance with virtue. It is not to wear every mask, but to be whole beneath them. The inner citadel is not a fantasy or a delusion. It is the most real thing about you. It is not an escape. It is a homecoming, a return to what does not move with the winds of circumstance, a place within you untouched by market trends, office politics, social media metrics, and the chaos of public perception. It is where your peace resides, not the peace that comes from everything going right, but the peace that comes from knowing what is right, the peace that lives in truth. The Stoic retreats here not to hide, but to see clearly, to act from the center rather than the storm, to remember who they are before the world told them who they should be. This citadel does not build itself. It must be cultivated moment by moment, through thought, through reflection, through stillness. Burnout is not just exhaustion, it is disconnection. Disconnection from your principles, disconnection from your priorities, disconnection from the present moment, where all clarity lives. When your actions become automatic, when your day becomes dictated by what is loud instead of what is lasting, you begin to lose sight of meaning. You begin to scatter your soul across dozens of shallow pursuits instead of anchoring it in one deep truth. That is when burnout begins. Not when you are doing too much, but when you are doing too little of what truly matters. The Stoic's remedy is not to grind harder, but to see clearer, to pause, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. They return, not to avoid, but to align. Reflection is not withdrawal, it is recalibration. It is the act of remembering who you are and why you are here. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself each morning and evening, not because he was fragile, but because he was human. He understood that the mind drifts, that the will weakens, and that clarity must be renewed daily. His meditations were not escape, they were a battle plan. A quiet war waged against confusion, chaos, and the creeping temptation to live for applause instead of virtue. This practice does not require monastic silence or long retreats into the mountains. It simply asks for presence. A few deep breaths before your first task. A pause to consider your response before sending that email. A moment to ask, "Why am I doing this?" before rushing to your next obligation. These are small choices, but they are powerful. They restore control. They restore intention. They restore the inner stillness that makes your outer action strong. Each one is a stone placed in the foundation of your citadel. These habits are not indulgences, they are essentials. They are the lifelines of your inner clarity, the non-negotiables of a life lived with direction. Just as your body needs oxygen, your mind needs quiet to sort signal from noise. Just as your muscles need recovery to grow stronger, your soul needs solitude to remember why you are doing what you're doing. Without that solitude, you begin to forget. You forget your values. You forget your pace. You forget the sound of your own voice underneath the constant chorus of urgency. When that stillness is neglected, you become efficient but empty, able to complete tasks, meet goals, hit deadlines, but lacking depth, lacking presence. You become busy, yes, but also brittle. Your calendar is full, but your spirit is vacant. You move quickly but without direction. You respond to every alert, every ding, every demand, until your day becomes a blur of reactions instead of a narrative of intention. Burnout rarely looks like failure from the outside. It often looks like success pursued without soul. You start reaching goals that don't fulfill you, checking boxes that no longer reflect your priorities, pleasing people who wouldn't notice if you fell apart. That is the cruel irony of burnout. It emerges not in the absence of activity, but in the absence of alignment. It thrives in lives that are full but not focused, productive but not purposeful. You appear to be winning, yet feel like you are losing something essential: your joy, your presence, your clarity. But the Stoic avoids this spiral, not by withdrawing from effort, but by anchoring every effort in meaning. They understand that rest is not a break from life, it is a return to life. That stillness is not about doing nothing, it is about doing the right things with greater intention. So they slow down, not in speed, but in awareness. They reduce the clutter, they refine their direction. They say no to what is impressive, so they can say yes to what is important. The Stoic chooses fewer things, but they do them more deeply. They choose fewer conversations, but speak with more weight. Fewer commitments, but bring more presence. Fewer goals, but move toward them with steady, unshakable force. They return to themselves, often, not because they are lost, but because that return is the practice of staying found. And they do this not once in a while, but habitually, ritually, faithfully, like tending a sacred fire that cannot be left unattended. And when you return to your inner citadel, when you carve out even a small moment of space with intention, you begin to remember things the world has asked you to forget. That you are not here to answer every call. That you are not here to chase every opportunity. That you are not here to meet every standard but your own. You remember, your power is not in doing everything. It is in choosing the right things. You are not here to react to everything. You are here to respond wisely, to move deliberately, to live by principle, not pressure. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be present. Present with your values. Present with your intentions. Present with your actions. You stop running from fire to fire, crisis to crisis, expectation to expectation. You stop burning yourself to prove that you're worthy. You begin to carry your own flame differently, with steadiness, with grace, with restraint. That is the Stoic path to resilience, not the false resilience of silent suffering, but the true resilience of daily return. It is not about holding everything together while crumbling inside. It is about coming back to yourself so consistently that you don't have to fall apart. It is about loyalty to your truth. It is about choosing peace over pressure, intention over impulse. And in doing so, you don't just avoid burnout, you build something better. You build a mind that cannot be shaken, a character that cannot be bought, a clarity that no noise can steal. Create a daily ritual of return. It can be 5 minutes of journaling where you write what you're grateful for, what you're anxious about, and what you must remember today. Or it can be a walk without your phone, a pause in your car before entering your home, a trip to the gym, a workout routine from home, such as push-ups and sit-ups, or a still moment with your coffee before the day begins. Use that time to reconnect. Ask yourself, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What truly matters today? Let your answers rebuild the walls of your inner citadel. Let them remind you that peace is not passive, it is protected. In this citadel, there is no burnout, only clarity, the kind of clarity that clears the fog from your thoughts and brings you back to what is real and right. Only strength, the deep, resilient kind that doesn't boast or break, but bends and adapts. Only the quiet confidence that you can endure anything, because you are no longer trying to be everything to everyone, no longer pulled in 100 directions by the need to prove, impress, or perform. You stop seeking wholeness through external validation and begin cultivating it from within. You understand that the world can roar, but it doesn't have to live inside you. You see that peace is not a place you reach once the noise ends, it's a place you choose in the midst of it. And the more often you return to this citadel, the more unshakable it becomes. Your responses become more deliberate, your focus sharpens, your compassion deepens, not because you've overextended yourself, but because you've preserved yourself. This is the heart of Stoic resilience, to endure not with tension, but with composure, to keep going not out of obligation, but out of alignment. And in this citadel, the fire within you is not chaotic or consuming. It is steady. It warms without burning. It illuminates without exhausting. You carry it forward, not to conquer the world, but to remain sovereign over your own. Chapter 3. Master the Art of Pausing. Burnout feeds on momentum without meaning. It is the byproduct of motion that never questions its direction, of activity that lacks alignment, and of effort that never pauses to ask why. We often think exhaustion is the enemy, but the real threat is thoughtless repetition, the constant push forward without reflection. In the Stoic tradition, mastery does not begin with control, but with observation, the ability to see clearly, to notice your thoughts before becoming them, to feel your emotions without obeying them. Pausing, then, is not the absence of action, it is the intelligence behind it. It is the breath that separates impulse from intention, the space between the spark and the wildfire, and it is within that space where your power lives. In a world addicted to urgency, the pause becomes a rebellion. When your phone pings, when your coworker complains, when your schedule overflows, when your mind spins with imagined catastrophes, the untrained mind reacts. It lunges, it overreaches, it collapses under the illusion that everything is urgent and that you must meet every demand immediately to prove your worth. But the Stoic does not flinch. They observe the urge, Then they interrogate it. They create a conscious delay between stimulus and response. Seneca reminds us, if one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. The pause is how you set your compass before lifting your sails. Without it, all movement is noise. Burnout thrives in the lives of those who forget to pause, those who sprint from task to task, from demand to demand, without ever considering the cost or the consequence. They move fast, but they move without direction. They wake up anxious, race through their day, fall into bed restless, and repeat the cycle, believing that movement is proof of meaning. But the Stoic refuses this delusion. They pause, not to avoid responsibility, but to choose it wisely, not to halt progress, but to give it roots. They know that effort without clarity is erosion, that speed without wisdom is self-sabotage, that success without alignment is silent suffering. The pause is not passive, it is sacred. It is where you realign your will with your reason, your heart with your values. It is the place where you ask essential questions. Is this aligned with my principles? Is this action worthy of my time, my energy, my life? Is this what I want to become more of? Most people never ask. They're too busy chasing, too afraid to stop. But the Stoic knows that endurance is not built by running faster. It is built by remembering why you run at all. This is why they endure, not because they never fall, but because they always return. The practice of return is their power. To master the pause is to master your energy, your focus, your destiny. It is to realize that your power does not come from always knowing the answer, but from knowing when to stop and ask the right question. It is to understand that a single mindful breath, taken in the heat of anger, in the middle of overstimulation, in the quiet anxiety of overthinking, has the power to interrupt an entire downward spiral. That one moment of intentional awareness can reset your physiology, interrupt a toxic behavior loop, and prevent a decision made in haste from becoming a source of lasting regret. That one inner voice, calmly asking, "Is this the right storm to be in?" can redirect your life away from needless suffering. The pause is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is restraint that builds strength, not saps it. To pause is to stand in the eye of a storm and realize that while everything around you is moving, you don't have to. You can choose. And to choose consciously, to choose based on values rather than pressures, that is the very essence of Stoic living. It is the most courageous kind of restraint, not because it avoids difficulty, but because it filters difficulty. It does not refuse the weight of responsibility. It selects the right weight to carry, the one that shapes your character, not the one that crushes your soul. The Stoic trains themselves in this art the way an archer trains their aim, not to be fast, but to be accurate, not to react at the first sign of movement, but to wait, observe, and act with intention. They understand that space is not the absence of action, it is the preparation for correct action. They insert space between words so they can speak not only truth, but truth that heals. They insert space between actions so that behavior becomes a reflection of principle, not panic. They insert space between demands so they can judge what is theirs to carry and what belongs to the chaos of others. In that space, however brief, it is not silence that fills the gap, but strength. It is not passivity, but composure. It is not fear, but courage properly directed. That space becomes a sanctuary of reason, a calm vantage point from which they can see clearly, act cleanly, and live freely. The world may pressure them to rush, but they will wait for wisdom. The crowd may urge them to respond, but they will speak only when their words are worthy. In the pause, they protect their clarity like a flame against the wind. To pause is to reclaim yourself from automation, from the compulsion to be constantly accessible, perpetually agreeable, effortlessly efficient. It is a rebellion against the cultural expectation to always be performing, producing, proving. It is to stop moving long enough to look down and realize you may be running on a treadmill, expending energy but going nowhere meaningful. It is to recognize that motion without clarity is not momentum. It is erosion. And so you stop. You breathe. You ask, why am I doing this? Who is this for? What am I sacrificing to keep going like this? These are not passive questions. They are the steering wheel of a conscious life. Every moment given to reflection is a moment reclaimed from reaction, a moment where you shift from being a puppet pulled by strings of urgency to becoming once again the sculptor of your time, the author of your actions, the guardian of your soul. This is the sacred moment where the Stoic resets not only their nervous system, but their sense of direction, their core values, their relationship with time and truth, where they retreat into the citadel of inner stillness, not to hide, but to align. It is in this quiet space that they remember what the world tried to make them forget, that clarity is not found in acceleration, but in reflection, that productivity means little without purpose. The pause is not the death of forward motion, it is the refinement of it. The Stoic understands that progress without awareness is like a ship with full sails and no rudder. Unexamined momentum is not an asset, it is a danger disguised as discipline. And so, they do not collapse under the mounting weight of the world. They do not fade into exhaustion when others would. They do not disappear into noise because they have made stillness their sanctuary. They have carved silence into a daily rhythm. They have made clarity a habit, not a lucky insight, but a ritual practice. They burn on, not in chaotic bursts, but in focused flames, not in desperate frenzy, but in calm mastery. Their fire is not random, it is refined, it is chosen, it is fueled not by pressure, but by purpose. That is the Stoic way, to endure, not through chaos, but through command, to keep going, not because they are forced, but because they are anchored. Build pauses into your daily life like pressure valves, mechanisms that release the internal strain before it explodes into overwhelm. Identify the signals of stress in your body, the quickening of breath, the tension in your shoulders, the racing of your mind. These are cues, not commands. When you feel them, install a mental trigger. Pause before speaking. Pause before committing. Pause before reacting. Even a few seconds of stillness can redirect an entire outcome. Let that pause become your gateway back to reason. Create sacred spaces in your day for intentional slowing. Before meetings, take a moment to breathe. Before checking your phone, take a beat to remember why you're checking it. At the end of the day, make time for a brief reflection. Write down one thing you did on autopilot, without awareness, and one thing you did from a place of purpose. Explore the difference in outcome. Explore the difference in feeling. Then strengthen the second. Over time, this simple practice will rewire your nervous system to favor response over reaction, intention over instinct. Burnout is not the enemy of greatness. Thoughtless activity is. The real threat is the compulsion to keep going without questioning direction or destination. It's the reflex to act simply because movement feels like meaning. But the Stoic knows better. They know that not every effort is progress, not every task is valuable, and not every path deserves your steps. The enemy is the unexamined life on autopilot, the one that confuses busyness with purpose. When you never pause to ask where you're going, you risk spending your entire life getting nowhere. The pause breaks that spell. It offers you a moment to recalibrate before you commit. To pause is not to fall behind. It is to step off the assembly line of anxiety and reclaim your sovereignty. It is to rise above the crowd that rushes into exhaustion and instead say, I will choose how I spend this moment. To pause is not weakness. It is strength in stillness. It is the decision to move forward with clarity rather than chaos. Let the world race if it must. You will move deliberately, anchored in conviction. Let the noise rage. You will act from stillness. Let chaos tempt you. You will remain rooted in principle, unshaken by the storm. That is the Stoic art of enduring without losing yourself. It's not about doing more, it's about seeing more. It is not found in constant effort, but in intentional engagement. It's not about how many battles you fight, but how wisely you choose them. The Stoic pauses to gain perspective. They pause to ensure their actions still reflect their deepest values. They resist the seduction of urgency and instead align with what is essential. They do not allow the pace of the world to dictate the state of their mind. It is not the act of running harder, but of choosing where and why to walk. That pause is not empty. It is full of wisdom, of renewal, of direction. It becomes a lighthouse in a sea of noise, a signal that not all movement is forward and not all action is progress. That is the final protection against burnout, mastery of the pause. A discipline so quiet it often escapes recognition, but so powerful it governs every great decision, every boundary held, every regret prevented. The pause is the fulcrum upon which all meaningful direction balances. It is the invisible strength that gives weight to clarity and sharpens the blade of your purpose. In the pause, you reclaim your sovereignty. You anchor your decisions not in pressure, but in purpose. It is there, in the breath between thought and action, that your best choices are born. A habit so simple it's overlooked, but so profound, it acts as a safeguard for your energy, your focus, and your integrity. In the space of a breath, a thought can shift from reactive to reflective. In the stillness between actions, your deeper values can speak. In that moment of stopping, your entire life can pivot away from exhaustion and toward alignment. That stillness is not a void, it is a source. It refuels what frenzy drains. It clarifies what chaos clouds. It recenters what stress tries to scatter. In a world that constantly demands more, louder, faster, the Stoic finds strength in stepping back, not as an escape, but as a recentering. Their power comes not from being always active, but from being always intentional. They are not driven by pace, but by principle. They do not confuse acceleration with achievement. From that stillness, they do not fall behind. They rise wiser. They rise lighter. They rise stronger. And they carry forward not just the fire of ambition, but the light of discernment. Their path is not frantic, but firm, not reactionary, but resolved. And it is in that quiet strength that they find their lasting power. The Stoic does not fear exhaustion, they fear distraction. Because distraction, not difficulty, is what fractures the soul. It makes you forget what you're here for. It trades your clarity for confusion, your intention for impulse. But you are not here to be frantically productive. You are here to be fully alive. That means living by your values, spending your energy on what matters, and protecting your peace as fiercely as your reputation. Burnout happens when you betray your internal compass in order to chase the external reward. It is a spiritual misalignment, not just a physical depletion. But the Stoic knows how to return. They know that energy is sacred, that rest is strategic, that presence is power. They choose quality over quantity, depth over speed. And in doing so, they last longer, shine brighter, and suffer less. You were not made to run endlessly. You were made to burn steadily, to pace yourself with wisdom rather than chase the world with desperation. You were not designed for permanent acceleration, but for sustainable purpose. You were made to endure, not by sheer force, but by unshakable alignment. To move through the world not as a machine pressed by deadlines, but as a sovereign being directed by principle. Let others rush through life chasing everything, only to feel they've gained nothing. You will walk with intention. Let others spend themselves proving they're enough. You will remember you already are. Let others race without direction. You will walk with purpose. Let them measure success by how much they do, while you measure it by how aligned you remain. You will remember that progress is not always forward, but inward. Sometimes the deepest growth is invisible. Sometimes the most important movement is staying still until you understand your next step. Let others burn out trying to be everything to everyone. You will burn true by choosing to be yourself, deeply, consistently, and with unwavering authenticity, because you understand that inner peace is more powerful than outer applause. The Stoic knows that to thrive is not to be everywhere, not to be everything, but to be whole and unwavering where it counts. Not to light every torch for others while neglecting your own, but to tend to the inner flame with care, with patience, and with conviction. That is where endurance is forged, not in spectacle, but in discipline. Not in the noise, but in the quiet resolve to stay loyal to what matters most. Because the Stoic doesn't just survive, they thrive. Not through frenzy, but through focus. Not through ambition alone, but through alignment. Their strength is not in how loud they move, but in how clearly they live. In a world obsessed with outcomes, the Stoic is devoted to integrity. So pause. Protect your citadel. Retreat to that place within you that remains unmoved by chaos and untouched by noise. Guard your energy like you would guard a sacred flame, not because you are weak, but because you understand its power. Honor your direction, even when no one else understands it. Even when the world rushes past you, measure your steps with care. The Stoic walks slower, not because they are behind, but because they are deliberate. Trust your rhythm, especially when the world tempts you to rush toward things that don't nourish your soul. Let your pace reflect your values, not your fears. Defend your clarity like your life depends on it, because it does. In the fog of modern life, clarity is not a given. It must be protected, reclaimed, and recentered. Every moment of confusion is a moment that could pull you off course. So return often to your why. Revisit the vision that anchors you. Your choices shape your character. Your energy reveals your values. How you move speaks louder than what you say, and your stillness is not absence. It is depth. It is presence. It is the refusal to be tossed about by the waves, and above all, burn on. Not wildly, not recklessly, but deliberately. Let your fire be steady, not erratic. Let your effort be precise, not panicked. With grace that steadies when the world shakes. With purpose that sharpens every task, every word, every moment. With truth that anchors you when others drift. This is how you live strong, not in resistance to difficulty, but in harmony with discipline. This is how you endure, not just for a moment, but for a lifetime. This is how you lead yourself back to peace, and never leave it behind again. In this strength, you are not just unbreakable, you are free.